But first of all, I want to introduce my wonderful panelists today. As I mentioned, on my immediate left, we're joined by Sarita Nayyar. She's the Chief Operating Officer of the World Economic Forum. And right there at the center of our panel, we're joined by Mr. Amitabh Kant, who's the Chief Executive Officer of NITI Aayog. And for the international audience, that's the organization that is crucial to advising both the central government and the state governments in terms of knowledge and smart policies and smart government. And he's also been instrumental, and that's very important to know, he's also been instrumental in the Incredible India campaign, and we'll hopefully hear a little bit about that in a second. And last but definitely not least, we're joined by Ajay Singh, who's the Chairman and Managing Director of SpiceJet India. And of course, as you mentioned, without him there's no tourism. Let's see if that's true over the course of this press conference, but he's definitely somebody who can talk very insightful about the topic of India's tourism potential. The World Economic Forum's theme for this meeting is creating Indian narratives for global challenges. Now, tourism is a wonderful thing. Everybody likes to travel, everybody likes to go on vacation, on holiday. Sarita, why is the World Economic Forum looking in the topic of tourism, and what is the report we're launching, and how did this come about, please?
Yeah, thank you. So travel and tourism, I mean, as was just mentioned, is something that we all do, we all love to do, and actually it has been growing as a global sector and industry quite aggressively. We've seen unprecedented numbers of people traveling overseas or internationally. In the 1950s, we had about 25 million people who were traveling globally, and now we are at 1.2 billion people. And this is expected really only to continue to grow, maybe to 1.8 billion is one forecast for 2030. So the other good news around this growth is that actually this growth is higher than the global GDP growth for the last 6 consecutive years. So it's clearly an opportunity area globally and for all countries, and that's one of the reasons the forum is very excited to be working on this area. From a global standpoint, the aviation, travel, and tourism industry is almost 10% of the GDP and another 10% of the jobs that are created. So from that standpoint as well, it's really a sector that has a lot to contribute to growth, to employment, and of course, along with that, to fostering development and developing tolerance among us individuals as well. So India has also made significant progress, and as you might be aware, we do conduct a travel and tourism competitiveness study and issue a report. And the most recent one this year actually shows that India has moved up quite a few places in its ranking, and it's now at the 40th ranked country. And so this fastest growth in terms of the positions and ranking is really a very good indicator of both the potential and the achievement so far. But what we also see is that while India has really a very high growth rate on the aviation sector, and it's really seen significant growth rate in recent years with almost 100 million people traveling domestically, on the international front, it's a slightly different picture with only 9 million, so just short of 10 million traveling international travelers arriving in India. So that clearly is an opportunity to create a demand for that, but as well as the supply that would need to be generated. So following the launch of our competitiveness report, in which India did sort of see a significant increase in its improvement in the ranking, there was a decision made by business and public sector here who work with us on the India side to really look at it a bit more deeply on what India could do and what are the opportunities for India. So that's what this report is about, that is being launched today. So it's sitting in the back, but here's the report, and it talks about the opportunity India has, a $20 billion opportunity. So very quickly, maybe I can share a few of the highlights, because the report is available to you to read as well. But if we look at the growth that we are seeing in India on travel and tourism or in international arrivals, if the current trajectory continues, then we'll see about 15 million tourists, foreign tourists by 2025. But there's also an opportunity to go beyond that, because if we were able to reach 20 million, then the opportunity in terms of economic value is really around 20 billion. As well, in terms of jobs, there's an opportunity to create additional 1 million jobs. And these are some of the metrics that we've had Bain and company work with us to support it, so they've really been very active with us in this report as well. Now, how might India get there? And the report talks a bit about it, but I think the beauty of this is that India already has a lot of what I would call core assets to build on to actually make sure that the opportunity can be capitalized on. So whether it's about the natural beauty and the unique cultural heritage India has, you know, we have beautiful landscapes and coastlines, and we have wildlife, and we have temples and mosques. So that core asset exists, and it's about how do we leverage that asset. So in terms of what India could do, and the report talks about this, is about how to enhance that value proposition that will make the tourists come here, and how to create a fostering and enabling environment that will then enable the industry to prosper. So very quickly to mention a few key things, opportunities or recommendations that come out in this report are around the large number of villages. There are over 600,000 villages in India. There are cultural aspects to each of them. Is there an opportunity to create some high experience opportunities for the tourists? We also know actually that the trend now is more towards experiential areas for tourism as opposed to just material goods. And in fact, for millennials, it's even a higher interest for them to really go for experiential opportunities. Then, of course, the Incredible India campaign, that has been quite a successful campaign and really has been a very strong campaign. There's an opportunity to take it to another level in terms of, you know, playing in the digital arena and working through social media and building on certain best practices and examples from the other parts of the world in creating websites, you know, where tourists can review the various areas that they go to and create content. One big area definitely is around, of course, the safety around travel. And there's both a perception and a reality, but I think if the reality is addressed, then the perception hopefully gets addressed as well. But that's a very important piece for people to feel safe. Then, of course, we have physical and digital infrastructure in terms of especially that last mile. If there's an opportunity to create experiences in remote parts of the country, then how do you ensure that you can actually reach them? And another core asset India has is the labor, right? So there's a lot of labor available. Can we create and skill people to create that, train them to create quality experiences and that quality experience for tourists? So those are some of the areas in terms of the recommendation that the report talks about. There is one very concrete area of recommendation that the report is suggesting, which is to create a tourism board at a national level, to create sort of a public-private composition of this board that would then allow to make progress around working on, enhancing industry coordination across the various industries, even perhaps various ministries that have a role to play, how you can build talent in a more coordinated manner. So if you look at how certain other parts of the world that are very strong in the tourism area have done this, they have usually had something like that at a national level. And certainly the states, of course, also have to come into play. So there might be opportunity to maybe test something or do a pilot in a state level. So the report really goes into it. I'll stop there. There's a lot in it, and you can look at that to get some of the details behind all of those.
Thank you, Sarita. And we weren't very subtle in stealing your idea to give this report a title when we called it Incredible India 2.0, and I'm pointing directly at my colleague Tiffany Misra, who has been instrumental in pulling this report together. But the Incredible India campaign was kind of, it's fair to say it sets the gold standard for how to market a country as a tourism destination. And I won't name any names, but a lot of countries try to copy that and try to follow in your footsteps. Now, if I remember correctly, the campaign was created almost 15 years ago. Now, with everything that we call this report 2.0, with everything that happens, how people have changed, how they book a trip, how they inform themselves about a destination, what would you change? What would the Incredible India 2.0 campaign look like if you had to do it all over again today?
Let me first compliment Sarita and her team from the World Economic Forum on this very excellent report on travel and tourism, because tourism is a multidisciplinary sector. Putting it all together is not an easy job, and it's been done exceedingly well in this report, so my compliments
Thank
to
you.
you. It's a report with a vision, with a foresight, and with a clear perspective. So I think, first of all, congratulations to World Economic Forum. Secondly, it's far more easier to brand a single product destination. If you're branding a wildlife destination like South Africa or a beach destination like Maldives, it's far more easier, but it's very difficult and a very complex exercise to brand a country like India, which is bigger than 24 countries of Europe, and which has very vast, varied products, from wildlife to heritage to beach to backwaters. It's just got everything, and it's got a very vibrant culture. To brand it was a very, very complex exercise, and nothing comes closer to it than incredible. And it is an incredible destination in many ways. So I really think that it was a unique thing. But Incredible India destination marketing was undertaken at the peak of a crisis, when the Twin Tower blast had taken place, and we were confronted with several other crises. There was an attack in Afghanistan. There was a war in Afghanistan. There was an attack on Parliament. The airlines had started withdrawing. Our hotels were doing 18 to 20% occupancy. We had very few hotels then, but they were doing very limited, occupancy, and there was a huge crisis. Those days, tourism used to be sold through tour operators. So we went to international tour operators. We said, in your tour packages, you put India. We'll buy advertising. They said you can buy the whole brochure, but India will not sell. Simply because there was no consumer demand at that point of time. The world wasn't traveling, and it wasn't traveling to South Asia for sure. And the challenge was that at that point of time, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, everybody had stopped advertising. At the peak of that crisis, we took that Incredible India initiative, and we did a 360-degree initiative. And we launched that campaign, which brought consumer demand back to India. It touched everyone's heart at that point of time. It went through digital media, TV, print. It brought consumer demand back. And because tourists started coming in, when we started it, we were getting about 1.8 million tourists. We took it, by the time I had left, there were almost 6 million tourists. So the demand, it was a marketing-led approach. And what it led to was because there was demand coming in, it led to the arrival of low-cost carriers in India. And the low-cost carriers then showed that there was a demand for both international and domestic tourism, and that led to the creation of new infrastructure. So Hyderabad, Bangalore, Mumbai, Chennai, Calcutta, Delhi airports are a creation of that generation of demand. It was a marketing-led strategy. And what India needs now is again a marketing-led initiative to take India to the next level of growth. So while 20 billion is one figure quoted by this report, to my mind, what India needs to do is to grow rapidly at 10% per year, year after year for 3 decades. And if you want to grow, if you have that ambition and hunger to grow at 10% plus for 3 decades, then you can't do it without travel and tourism. Firstly, you can't keep growing without creating jobs. It can't be a jobless growth strategy. It has to be growth with jobs. And if you want growth with jobs and you want to grow for 3 decades, you can't do it without tourism, because this is the sector which will create jobs. And if you want to create jobs in India, the sector to go for is tourism. And therefore, as we discussed in the morning, India needs to focus on creation of 5 states which will champion tourism. We need 5 integrated circuits, and we need 5 destinations, and we need reinvigorated, redesigned Incredible India 2.0, which will penetrate global markets, and which will penetrate key markets. So you need to do that research, that what are the existing markets from where you get key tourists, what are the new markets you will generate, and what are the markets you will seed for the future. You need a strategy for the next decade which will take India to the next big quantum jump. This can't be done without infrastructure. This can't be done without great entrepreneurs like Ajay Singh who provide connectivity. It can't be done without great tour operators. It can't be done without airports. And Indian airports must become the hub, the regional hubs for South and Southeast Asia and for the entire Gulf region. They are the world's best airports now, and therefore they must become the key drivers of India's growth. So infrastructure, airport, airlines, private sector, all of us, with government as the key catalyst to launch Incredible India 2.0, has to be a partnership effort to make travel and tourism as the key catalyst of growth for India's future.
Thank you, Amitabh, and you spoke with such passion that I think I'll open a hotel tomorrow in India to benefit from that.
That's the fastest way for you to become a billionaire.
Well, I'll keep that in mind. But Ajay, I'm sure you would subscribe to the goal and the attractiveness of 10% growth over 3 decades. But you are leading a business, and while SpiceJet has an impressive track record of growth, you know this is not easy to achieve. From your perspective, from your business perspective, what are the biggest hurdles for you to achieve these targets and for India to achieve these targets?
I think firstly, there's no question that this needs to be done. I think the aviation sector has shown that we've been growing at 20% every year for the last several years. And if infrastructure keeps pace, we will keep growing at that pace for the foreseeable future. So certainly, I think the goal that Amitabh is mentioning, we definitely need to subscribe to it. And you know, this is a young country. It's probably the youngest country in the world, and therefore it also is probably one of the most impatient countries in the world. We can't keep waiting forever. We need to set a goal, and we need to set a strategy in place, and we all need to work together to make it happen. I think significant challenges, of course, as in all things in India. While there is terrific potential, we have this amazing, beautiful country, and really incredible places to see, and of course, you know, huge compliments to the team which did incredible in India, including their leader, Mr. Kant. I think we need to actually look around the world and see what the world has done, and which countries have succeeded and why they have succeeded. We should not try and start creating completely different rules in India. We should see what has made France work, what has made the United States work, what has made even small countries like Dubai work, you know, destinations like Singapore, Malaysia, what has really made them work. And I think a lot of the answers are contained in the report that you so ably put together. And it's just that we need to get champions on all sides, champions in government, at the level of the state. As we discussed this morning, let's pick 5 destinations. Let's ensure that there are 5 chief ministers of 5 states which will champion this. Let's get the private sector involved. Let's get the central government involved, and let's have a program where we ensure that those 5 destinations are absolutely world class. The experience of going to those 5 destinations is absolutely world class. The airport is world class. There are enough flights going into that airport. As you emerge from the airport, you get a, you know, first-rate taxi service. You have foreign exchange conversions. You have a way in which clearances for things like just go out and get this done.
Thank you, Ajay. And let me follow up on one point you mentioned. You mentioned how young India is, and you mentioned the impatience. But these young people are not just tourists looking to new experiences, new travel experiences, but they're also looking for jobs. So in the tourism sector, in the aviation sector, what are the skills that are currently missing and will be most needed in the coming years to realize that that perspective? And Amitabh, please feel free to jump in if you have to.
And you know, we need lots of everything here. If the aviation sector is growing at 20%, we need just so many more pilots. We need first officers. We need aircraft technicians. We need cabin crew. We are just creating so many jobs all the time. And India, being this young country that it is, we have people with the potential, with the education to be trained to do all these jobs. In tourism, of course, we need tour guides. We need people who work in hotels. In all sorts of jobs. So India has this unique opportunity of skilling its young people and creating jobs not only within our country but actually exporting them to the world. We have people who can speak in English. That's a huge positive to start with. And we have people with a pretty high degree of smarts, understanding, and I think fantastic potential. We just need to have organized forums, organized institutions which can train them and skill them and have them ready for jobs in India and overseas. And of course we need to remember that this is hugely exciting for the political class as well. I mean, as Amitabh was saying, India needs growth, but it needs growth with jobs. And what better way to create jobs than to promote tourism and aviation? I think these are two of the greatest creators of jobs in the world. And I think this needs to be brought to the attention of every political leader in this country to say that by implementing the steps that are suggested in reports such as the WEF report, what will happen is that a huge number of jobs will be created, and that will get great political capital for our leadership.
There's an important point, and that is, the world of travel and tourism was actually designed for the Western tourist. All these institutes of hospitality at Lausanne in Switzerland were all designed for the Western tourist. If you look at the United States of America and if you look at Europe, 90% of them have already traveled abroad. They've already traveled. If you look at emerging markets, only 5% of the emerging markets have traveled. And as the GDP grows, as per capita income grows, Indians, Chinese are growing in massive numbers. So India is sending out, India is actually sending out 18 million outbound tourists. 18 million. Look at China. I mean, you go to any heritage site in France, everything is in Chinese. So you have Chinese brochures, you have Chinese websites, you have Chinese guides. So there's a new class of tourist who's coming in, and that's the Indian tourist. So Indians are outspending Americans in UK. Indians are outspending Chinese in Singapore. So what is going to happen is that much like in 70s you saw this guide in front with Japanese tourists at the back, the next decade will be of Indian tourists with a guide in front, Indian. So Indians will be traveling all over the world, and it'll be very difficult. The Americans and the Europeans have already traveled. They're not going to be the big spenders. The big spenders will be the Indians. And therefore, there's a huge opportunity that the Four Seasons of the world, the Ritz-Carltons of the world, the Marriotts of the world will have to redesign their product for Indian travelers. And therefore, you will need a lot of Indian managers to manage the Gujarati tourists who travel, or the Bengali tourists who travel, or the Delhi tourists who travel, and therefore the new set of jobs. And you're finding this actually. Many of these new general managers of hotels abroad are all Indians. I mean, the Taj, the new CEO is a guy who went to Germany many years back and is coming back to head the Taj here, or so on. The many, or the earlier one also. So you will see that Indians will take over And one of the big investments India has done is in creating the institutes of hospitality management, 25 institutes of hospitality management. It's a big success story. And so we've been able to create managers, but we need to get into the next league. We need great chefs. We need great guys who can do, who can clean the bed sheets, who can, the nitty-gritties of hotel. And therefore, these institutes of hospitality management have to be, the infrastructure is there. We need to convert them into 24/7, 365 days a year, round the clock, 3 shifts, to train a whole lot of people into managing the nitty-gritties of hotels.
Thank you, Amitabh. I know I've overrun, hopefully, and that's very bad for a Swiss organization, but let's see if there's any questions in the audience to our panelists. Do I see any questions? It looks like you answered everything to everybody's satisfaction. Well, thank you very much. Let's meet again in 5 years here and discuss where we are with the plans.
Sure.
And thank you very much for being here. Thank you for watching, and a special thank you to all my panelists here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.